My name is Avery Walton, and that day, when my daughter-in-law Harper asked me to leave, I knew she thought she was protecting herself, protecting her marriage, protecting her peace. But deep inside, I also knew something she did not. I knew she was not the problem. My son was. Not because he was a bad man, not because he lacked love, but because he carried a truth he himself never understood. A truth I hid, a truth I covered, a truth I protected with every breath inside me. The truth of his illness, the truth of the disorder that shaped his entire life, a truth I feared Harper would one day discover. And now she had. I remember standing at the door, looking back at her face. She looked tired, almost defeated. She was only 30, but in that moment she looked so much older, like life had pushed her too fast. Her hands were folded in front of her, holding each other tightly like she was trying to stop them from shaking. I could see guilt in her eyes, and for a moment, I wished I could tell her the truth. I wished I could say, Harper, it's not your fault. None of this is your fault. But I didn't. Because if I spoke those words, the world I built around her would collapse. The world I built around my son. The world I created to hide the one thing I feared more than anything, people knowing who he really was. Or rather, what he struggled with. So I kept my quiet smile. I stepped outside, and as the door closed behind me, I exhaled a breath that felt older than my own bones. Maybe it is time I tell this story. Maybe it is time I speak the truth I never spoke, not even to myself. If you are listening, then understand something. I am not a perfect mother. I made mistakes. I made choices that were wrong, but I made them because I loved my son, Jackson. I loved him so much that I ruined the life of the woman who loved him too. Harper, the sweetest young woman I had ever met. The woman who trusted me. The woman who married my son with hope in her eyes. The woman who thought she was joining a loving family. She didn't know the long history that lived behind my gentle smile. She didn't know the nights I stayed awake beside my son's bed when he was little, watching him break down over things most children shrugged off. She didn't know the way he would shut down for hours, or the times he would cling to me with fear I couldn't name. She didn't know I chose silence. I chose hiding. I chose denial. And now, I must tell why. Jackson was born on a rainy November morning in 1989. The sky was gray. The world felt soft. And when the nurse placed him in my arms at St. Luke's Hospital, I felt a kind of love that almost frightened me. He was quiet, too quiet, the nurse said with a half smile, trying not to worry me. But I worried anyway. His little fingers curled tightly into mine. His eyes didn't blink much. He watched everything without moving. Even as a newborn, he was different. My husband, Mark, used to say, he's just calm. Nothing wrong with a calm baby. I believed him because I wanted to. But as Jackson grew older, little things began to show. Small things. Things easy to ignore if you wanted to ignore them. At age 3, he lined his toy cars in perfectly straight lines. Not one car could be out of place. Not one could face the wrong direction. If even one was moved by an inch, he cried as if someone had broken something inside him. At age 5, he memorized every number on our street. He knew which house had which mailbox. He knew where each neighbor parked their car. He noticed changes instantly: a new plant, a missing chair, a moved rug. At age 7, he struggled to look people in the eyes, but he could tell you every fact about trains, every date of historical events, every detail of anything that caught his mind. His teachers said, Jackson is bright, very bright, but he has difficulty connecting. They use soft words like difficulty and challenge. No one used the other words, the harder words, the ones that curled around my heart like cold fingers. I pretended not to hear them. I smiled in parent-teacher meetings. I said things like, he's just shy, he's sensitive, he needs time. But when we were home, watching cartoons in the living room, I saw the truth in the way he looked at the floor instead of me. In the way he panicked when a routine changed. In the way he froze when someone raised their voice, even in excitement. Mark believed nothing was wrong. He was a simple man who trusted simple explanations. He's fine, Avery, he would say. Don't make problems where there are none. But mothers see what others do not. I knew long before doctors ever said anything. And yet, I chose silence. People might ask, why didn't you get him help? Why didn't you get a diagnosis? Why didn't you tell the family? Because I was afraid. Afraid of labels. Afraid of judgment. Afraid of people calling my son names. Afraid he would grow up believing he was broken. And there was another reason too, a selfish one. I didn't want the world to know I had failed as a mother. I thought if I worked harder, if I guided him, taught him, protected him, then no one would see the truth. They would only see a quiet boy, a shy boy, a smart boy. Not a boy with a personality disorder. Not a boy who struggled to understand emotions. Not a boy who lived in a world of patterns and rules only he understood. So I hid his symptoms. I covered his meltdowns. I explained away his behavior. I apologized to teachers, to family, to neighbors. I made excuses that sounded brave on the outside but were made of fear. And to everyone's surprise, Jackson grew into a handsome, tall young man with sharp features and a gentle voice. People thought he was calm. People thought he was polite. People thought he was responsible. Only I saw the cracks beneath. Only I saw the things he tried to hide, just like I did. I remember the day Harper walked into our house for the first time. It was a warm Saturday afternoon. Birds were loud. The sky was clear. And Jackson looked more nervous than I had seen him in years. He kept adjusting his shirt. He kept glancing at the clock. He kept pacing from the kitchen to the living room like he was trying to memorize the path. When she finally knocked, he froze. He couldn't move. He stared at the door like it was something terrifying. So I opened it, and there she was, Harper Reed. A young woman with bright brown eyes and a soft smile that looked like she had never hurt anyone in her life. She wore a simple yellow dress, and her hair was tied in a loose ponytail. "Hi, Mrs. Walton," she said with a sweet, nervous laugh. "I hope I'm not too early." I felt something warm bloom in my chest. She felt like light, simple, gentle light. Jackson finally walked over. He didn't meet her eyes for long, but I saw the way his fingers twitched, a sign only I knew meant he was overwhelmed. Harper didn't notice, or maybe she did, but she chose kindness instead of questions. They sat on the couch together. She talked. He listened. He barely spoke, but she didn't seem to mind. I remember thinking, maybe she is exactly what he needs. Jackson and Harper dated for almost 2 years before he proposed. 2 years of quiet dinners, library dates, movies they never finished because Harper would fall asleep halfway through. And in those years, I watched my son through a different lens. He was gentle with her, calm around her, safe with her, but I also saw signs she didn't understand. The way he avoided emotional conversations, the way he shut down during conflict, the way he became distant after overstimulation, the way he took everything literally, the way he repeated small routines until they became rituals. Harper thought he was just unique. She thought he was thoughtful. She thought he was careful. She did not know how much effort it took for him to hold his world together. And I did not tell her, because I thought love could fix everything. I thought her kindness could balance his struggles. I thought her patience could soothe him. I thought her love would save him. But I forgot something important. Love does not erase illness. Love does not solve disorder. Love does not fix what someone does not understand about themselves. And so, on their wedding day, when Harper walked down the aisle looking like a painting, I felt a knot in my stomach. I knew the truth I kept hidden would one day surface. I knew it would break something. I just prayed it wouldn't break her. It happened after their first year of marriage. Small at first, almost invisible. Harper called me one evening. Her voice was soft but trembling. "Mom, does Jackson ever get overwhelmed?" I froze. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "He gets quiet," she whispered. "He shuts down. He won't look at me. He won't talk. It feels like he disappears." My heart tightened. "It begins," I thought. "It's nothing," I said gently. "He's always been sensitive." I hated myself the moment I said it. But once the first lie leaves your lips, the next one is easier. And the next, and the next. Harper believed me, and I let her. Months later, another call. This time her voice was scared. "Mom, he forgets things, important things, our plans, our talks. Sometimes he doesn't remember the details I told him yesterday." I felt my chest sting. I could hear her trying not to cry. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to hold her the way I did when she was a new bride, so full of hope. But fear won again. Fear of exposing the truth. Fear of losing control. Fear of my son being labeled forever. So I told her, maybe he's just stressed. Work can be hard. Another lie. Another thread in a web I could no longer escape. This one happened when I visited their home. Jackson was sitting on the couch, staring at a spot on the wall, not blinking, not moving. Harper was in the kitchen, crying quietly. I sat beside him. I touched his hand gently. He whispered, "I can't think right now." I nodded. I knew this version of him. I had seen it for years. He was shutting down, retreating into himself, overwhelmed by something he couldn't name. I walked to Harper. She wiped her tears quickly. "Is he okay? What is happening? Did I do something wrong?" Her fear broke something inside me. "It's not you," I whispered, hugging her. But I didn't tell her what it really was. And that was the exact moment I realized my silence was no longer protecting my son. It was destroying his wife. The day everything changed began very quietly. It was a Sunday morning, soft and peaceful, the kind where the sunlight enters the house slowly, as if it doesn't want to wake anyone to fast. I had come over to bring homemade soup for Harper. She loved my chicken noodle soup. She said it tasted like comfort. She said it tasted like family. I remember ringing the doorbell and waiting. No answer. I rang again. Still nothing. At first, I thought they were still asleep. But then I heard something so faint that at first I couldn't tell if it was real. A soft cry. A woman's cry. "Harper." My heart dropped. I opened the door. They always kept it unlocked during the day. And when I stepped inside, everything was still. Too still. The kind of stillness that sits on your skin like cold fog. I walked through the hallway slowly, almost afraid of what I would find. And then I saw her. Harper was sitting on the kitchen floor, knees pulled to her chest, her hair messy, her face buried in her hands. The morning light hit her cheek, and I saw her tears shining like tiny drops of glass. "Harper?" I whispered. She looked up. Her eyes were red. Her breathing was uneven. "Oh, Mom, I didn't hear you come in." She tried to wipe her face quickly, but she couldn't hide the shaking. I knelt beside her and touched her arm gently. "What happened, sweetheart?" She opened her mouth but said nothing at first. Words seemed too heavy. Finally, she whispered, "Jackson got upset last night." My chest tightened. I already felt fear rising inside me. "What do you mean upset?" I asked softly. She swallowed hard. "He started pacing back and forth. Then he stopped talking. And then he told me he couldn't feel anything. He said his head was too full. He said he wanted everything to stop." Her voice cracked. I didn't know what to do. I tried to talk to him, but he just stared at the wall and kept saying he wasn't here, that he couldn't think, that he couldn't feel me. I felt a deep ache inside my stomach. I knew exactly what she was describing. A dissociative shutdown. He used to have those when he was younger, but Harper didn't know that. She thought it was new. She thought it was her fault. She thought she was losing her husband. "Where is he now?" I whispered. "In the bedroom," she said. "He hasn't come out since last night." I stood slowly and walked toward their room. The hallway felt long. Every step felt like a memory being pulled out from a dark place inside me. When I reached the door, I opened it gently. Jackson was sitting on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly together. He wasn't looking at anything. Not the window, not the door, not even the floor. He was looking at nothing. "Jackson," I said softly. No response. "Sweetheart, it's Mom." Still nothing. He was inside his head, deep inside, somewhere I could not reach anymore. For years, I had been able to pull him out of these moments. A soft touch on his shoulder, a steady voice, a familiar scent. But this time he was too far, and I knew why. Because now he had someone else he loved, someone who carried his expectations, someone who expected him to be stable, strong, capable. Harper. And that pressure, that emotional demand was something that overwhelmed him in ways he could not explain. I turned back to Harper, who was standing behind me quietly, watching, waiting for something to make sense. "Have you two argued?" I asked gently. She nodded slowly. "We had a small disagreement. I wanted him to come with me to my sister's birthday dinner. He said he didn't want to go. I thought he was just being stubborn. I told him he should try harder. I said he should make an effort." Her lips trembled. "And then, he shut down like this, right in front of me." Tears rolled down her cheeks again. "I feel like I broke him." She covered her mouth as if the words were too painful. I pulled her into my arms. "No, sweetheart, you didn't break him. He just struggles with things differently." "But why?" She whispered against my shoulder. "Why does he react like this? Why does he forget? Why does he drift away? Why does he stop feeling? Why?" Her voice cracked again. And that was the first moment, the very first moment when I realized I had run out of lies. My silence had no place left to hide. Harper deserved answers, but I wasn't ready to give them yet. So instead, I said the only thing I could manage. He has always been like this. The moment the words left my mouth, Harper pulled back and looked at me. What do you mean always? Her eyes were searching mine, looking for truth, looking for something I had kept locked away for decades. He used to shut down as a child, I said quietly. He gets overwhelmed easily. Harper swallowed hard. So, this is not new. I shook my head slowly. Her eyes filled with hurt. Then why didn't you tell me? Those words hit me harder than I expected. Because there was no good answer, only the truth I had been running from. I was afraid, I whispered. Her breath caught. Afraid of what? I looked down at my hands. They were trembling. Afraid that if I told you, you wouldn't marry him. The silence that followed was painful. Harper stepped back an inch. Just an inch. But I felt it like 1,000 miles. Mom, she whispered, you should have told me. I married a man who needs help. I married a man who is struggling. I married a man I love, but I didn't know what I was walking into. I wanted to cry. I wanted to sink into the floor. But before I could respond, Jackson stood up abruptly. We both turned toward him. His face looked blank, his eyes unfocused, his voice faint. I can hear you, he whispered. Harper's breath froze. I stepped forward slowly, like approaching a frightened child. Jackson, sweetheart, it's okay. We're just talking. He shook his head. No, you're talking about me. His fingers twisted together anxiously. I heard every word. I hear everything, even when I'm not supposed to, even when I'm not. Here. He touched his temple gently, as if something inside hurt. Then he whispered something that broke me. I don't know how to be normal, Harper gasped. I felt tears burn my eyes. He looked at her, not fully meeting her gaze, but close enough that I saw his fear. You want a normal husband, he said softly. You want someone who can talk, and think, and feel the way you do. But I can't. I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to be like that. Harper's whole body shook. She reached out to him, but he stepped back. No, don't touch me, he said, voice trembling. Not right now. I'm not stable. He dragged his hand down his face. I am so tired of failing you. I am so tired of trying to be something I'm not. Harper covered her mouth. Jackson, you're not failing me, she whispered, but he shook his head again. I can't feel you when I shut down. I can't hear you. I can't think. And I know it hurts you. I can see it in your face. I can feel your disappointment even when I can't feel anything else. He sat back down on the bed and held his head in his hands. I think something is wrong with me, he whispered. Harper's tears fell onto her shirt. I looked at my son, my grown, married son, sitting in front of me with the same fear he had when he was 8 and did not understand why he felt different from other kids. And I could no longer pretend. I sat beside him, placed a hand gently on his back, and whispered, Sweetheart, you're not broken. You're overwhelmed. That's all. He shook his head. No, Mom, I think I have something. A disorder. I've been looking it up. I've been reading things. Harper's eyes widened. My heart felt like it stopped. What do you mean? I whispered. He lifted his head slightly. I read about dissociation, about emotional disconnect, about personality disorders, and some of it sounds like me. Harper took a shaky breath. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered. Jackson let out a broken laugh. I didn't know. I just thought I was weird. He turned to me slowly. Mom, did you know? His voice was soft, almost childlike. I felt the air leave my lungs. I had a choice in that moment. Tell the truth, or lie again. I looked at my son, the boy I raised, the man I protected, the child I hid. I looked at Harper, the woman who loved him, trusted me. And for the first time in decades, I told the truth. Yes, I whispered. I knew. The room fell silent, painfully silent. Harper stared at me, eyes filled with disbelief. Jackson stared at the wall, like the truth was too heavy to look at directly. How long? He whispered without moving. Since you were little, I said softly. Harper's hand covered her mouth again, like the truth hurt too much to take in. Jackson shook his head slowly. So, you hid it? I nodded. Why? He whispered. The answer came out in a voice I barely recognized, a voice full of regret, full of shame, full of fear. Because I didn't want the world to treat you differently. I didn't want you to feel like something was wrong with you. I didn't want you to think you were broken. I wanted you to have a normal life. He laughed again, a quiet, painful sound. And look how that turned out. Harper sat on the floor, her knees weak, her tears unstoppable. Mom, she whispered, you should have told me. I would have understood. I would have helped. I would have prepared myself. I looked down. I deserved her words. Every single one. I know, I whispered. I know I should have. Jackson rubbed his face. So what now? He asked quietly. Do I pretend again? Do I keep shutting down? Do I lose my marriage? Harper crawled closer to him, even though she was crying. You won't lose me, she whispered. But he shook his head. You already did, he said. I saw it in your eyes last night. I saw fear. Harper inhaled a sharp breath. It wasn't fear, she said, voice breaking. It was worry. I didn't know what was happening. I thought you didn't love me. Jackson looked at her slowly. I don't know how to show love the way you want, he said. And I'm afraid you'll get tired one day. She shook her head, violently, desperately. I won't, she whispered. But even I could hear uncertainty beneath her words. And Jackson heard it too. He lowered his head again. And that's when Harper turned to me. Her voice was soft, barely audible, but filled with hurt. Mom, please leave us alone for today. I need time with him. And I need time with myself. The world blurred around me. I nodded slowly. I walked to the door. And that was the day she asked me to leave. Not out of anger, not out of cruelty, but out of hurt, out of confusion, out of the need for truth, the truth I should have given her from the beginning. And as I walked away, I realized this was only the beginning of the storm. I did not go home after Harper asked me to leave. I could not. Instead, I sat in my old blue car parked at the side of their street, hands resting on the steering wheel, eyes staring at nothing. The sky looked dim. The morning light had lost its warmth. Everything around me felt heavy, as if the world itself knew something inside me had cracked open. Cars passed occasionally. A man walked his dog. A child rode past on a bicycle. Life went on simple, unchanged. But inside my chest, things were shifting. Old memories were waking up. Old guilt was stirring. Old truths were whispering their sharp little reminders. I closed my eyes and let myself feel the weight of it. Harper was hurting. Jackson was breaking. And I was the one who lit the match long ago. I didn't mean to. I didn't want to. But silence has a way of burning everything it touches slowly, quietly, gently until the day the fire reaches the surface. A phone call from the post as I sat there. My phone rang. The sound felt too loud for the quiet morning. I looked at the screen. Dr. Harris. My breath caught. He was the child psychologist who once suggested we should explore further evaluation when Jackson was 12. A gentle man with thin glasses, soft brown eyes, and a calm voice. A man I avoided after one uncomfortable appointment. Why was he calling? I answered. Hello? A familiar, soft voice replied. Mrs. Walton. It's been a very long time. Yes, I whispered. It has. I don't want to intrude, he said slowly, but someone contacted my office this morning, asking about old records. About Jackson. My heart dropped. Harper. It must have been Harper. Is everything all right? He asked with concern. No, nothing was all right, but all I managed to say was, I think it's finally time for the truth. He was silent for a long moment. Then he said something I was never prepared to hear. Mrs. Walton, I remember telling you that ignoring signs doesn't make them disappear. My throat tightened. Yes, I whispered. You loved him. He continued gently. I understand that, but love cannot replace understanding. I closed my eyes again, tears gathering. I know, I said softly. I know that now. His voice softened further. Tell me, how is Jackson? I swallowed a painful lump in my throat. He's overwhelmed, I said. He knows something is wrong. He's scared. His wife is scared. And you? He asked gently. I hesitated. I'm the reason they're hurting, I whispered. I hid too much. For too long. He sighed, not with judgment, but with sadness. We all make choices trying to protect our children, he said. But sometimes, protection becomes isolation. I felt those words sink into me like stones. He continued. If Harper reached out, it means she's looking for answers. If Jackson is aware of his struggles, it means he's ready to face them. This is not the end of anything. It is the beginning. I had never thought of it that way. The beginning, I repeated quietly. Yes, he said. The beginning of understanding. The beginning of healing. The beginning of honesty. His words felt warm, like a blanket pulled gently over a shivering body. I want to help, I whispered. Then be truthful, he said softly. Be present, and let Jackson lead the next step. I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see me. After we hung up, I stayed in the car for several more minutes, breathing, thinking, remembering. Then I did something unexpected. I drove back to my house, not to hide, not to avoid, but to gather the things I kept locked away, the things I never showed Jackson, the things I never shared with Harper. Old notebooks, childhood evaluations, letters from teachers, reports I never submitted, notes I never acted on, pieces of truth scattered through the years like broken glass. I picked them up slowly, carefully, as though they were fragile memories that might crumble if held too tightly. Because now, the truth could not wait anymore. By the time I finished gathering everything, the sun had begun to lower behind the trees. The day felt long, stretched, and tired. And then my phone rang again. This time Jackson. I answered immediately. Jackson? His voice was quiet, shaky, fragile. Mom, can you come back? My breath trembled. Yes, I whispered. Yes, sweetheart, I'm coming. He exhaled slowly, like he had been holding his breath for hours. Harper wants to talk, he said. I want to talk too. My eyes filled with tears. Okay, I whispered. I'll be there soon. I grabbed the folder of documents thick with years of hidden truth and drove back to their house. My hands were shaking the entire drive. When I entered the house, Harper and Jackson were sitting on the sofa together. His shoulders were slightly hunched. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap. They both looked exhausted, emotionally worn out. Come sit, Harper said softly. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were different now. Not angry, not cold, just searching. I sat across from them, placing the folder beside me. Jackson's eyes flickered to it. What's that? He asked quietly. Your story, I said. The one I should have told long ago. Harper swallowed hard. For now, she whispered. Can you just tell us why you hid it? Her voice didn't have anger in it, only sadness, only longing, only confusion. I took a deep breath. Because I didn't want the world to treat you the way they treated your uncle, I whispered. They both looked up. My brother, I continued, had a personality disorder too. Back in the 70s and 82nds, people didn't understand. They said he was lazy. They said he was dramatic. They said he was difficult. He struggled his whole life because no one believed him, not even our own parents. I felt my voice tremble. I watched him break slowly, not because of the disorder itself, but because of the judgment, the shame, the cruelty. Jackson's eyes softened. Harper leaned forward slightly, listening intently. When you were born, I said, looking at my son, I promised myself that you would never go through what he did. I promised you would have a normal childhood, a normal life. My voice cracked. But in trying to give you that, I stole something else. I stole understanding. I stole honesty. I stole your right to know yourself. Jackson rubbed his hands together slowly. So you hid it, he said softly. I nodded. I hid it because I loved you. But sometimes love becomes fear, and fear makes us do the wrong things. Harper wiped her cheek silently. Jackson looked down at the floor. I continued. I should have taken you to specialists. I should have gotten you help. I should have told the truth to you, and to Harper, and to myself. I paused, feeling my throat tighten again. I was wrong. The room stayed silent for a long time. Harper finally spoke. Mom, I didn't need him to be perfect. I just needed to understand him. Her voice was quiet, gentle, honest. I know, I whispered, but I didn't give you the chance. She nodded slowly, tears falling again. Then Jackson cleared his throat softly. Mom, what do I have? The question hit the air like a soft, fragile echo. I opened the folder slowly, hands trembling. Inside were pages with words like, Number 1, emotional dysregulation. Number 2, sensory sensitivity. Number 3, personality traits. Jackson watched closely. What does it mean? He whispered. I looked at him gently. It means your brain works differently, I said. It means you feel things intensely. Then not at all. It means you get overwhelmed easily. It means you can love deeply even when you can't express it the way others expect. It means you're not broken, just wired differently. Harper reached for Jackson's hand carefully, slowly, gently. He didn't pull away this time. Is it a disorder? He asked. I nodded softly. Yes, but it doesn't define you. It never did. It's just a part of you. A part we never spoke about. A part we never understood. Jackson inhaled shakily. So, everything I feel, everything I do, everything I struggle with, it all has a reason? Yes, I whispered. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. A small, shaky laugh escaped him. I thought I was just a failure. The pain in his voice made Harper burst into sobs. She wrapped her arms around him gently. No, she whispered into his shoulder. You are not a failure. You're my husband, and I love you. I just needed to understand you. Jackson closed his eyes, letting himself lean into her embrace slowly, something he rarely allowed himself to do. I felt tears slip down my cheeks quietly. For the first time in years, I saw relief on his face, real relief, and I realized something profound. The truth I feared was the truth he needed. After a long moment of silence, Harper looked at me. Mom, what do we do now? A simple question, a heavy question, and the turning point of everything. I took a deep breath. We get him help, I whispered. We learn, we support, we understand, we stop pretending. Jackson looked at me, eyes still wet. Are you going to help? He asked softly. I moved closer and held his hands. I am going to help you every step of the way, I said. No more hiding, no more silence, no more fear. Harper nodded, wiping her tears again. I want to learn everything, she whispered. I want to understand him. I want to help him. I want to love him the way he needs. Jackson's lips trembled, and then slowly he let his head rest on her shoulder. A gesture so small, yet so rare for him, that both Harper and I froze for a moment. He whispered, I don't want to lose you. You won't, she whispered back. But then she said something else, something honest, something brave, something necessary. But we can't continue the way we have been. We need support. We need answers. We need honesty. Jackson nodded against her shoulder. I know, he whispered. I watched them, my son and his wife, holding each other in a quiet room full of soft light and heavy truths. And I knew everything would change now. But maybe change was exactly what we needed. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. Not because I slept well, I didn't. My mind had spent the whole night wandering through memories, questions, regrets, and quiet lessons I wished I had learned years ago. But I woke early because something felt different. A kind of stillness that wasn't fear anymore, but possibility. A thin, fragile possibility, like the first ray of light touching a dark room after a long night. I made a small breakfast and brought it back to Harper and Jackson's house. Nothing special, just toast, scrambled eggs, and tea. But I remember carrying that tray with a strange mix of anxiety and hope. When I knocked, Harper opened the door. Her eyes were tired, slightly swollen, but softer. Not broken, not angry, just open. Good morning, Mom, she whispered. I smiled gently. Good morning, sweetheart. Jackson was sitting at the dining table. He looked a little distant, but not in the way he usually did when shutting down. This was different. He looked thoughtful, reflective, almost aware. Hi, Mom, he said quietly. I placed the tray on the table. Thought you two might need this. Harper smiled, the first soft smile I had seen in days. Thank you. We all sat down, but none of us started eating. The silence was gentle, not uncomfortable, not tense, just gentle. Then Jackson spoke, and his voice carried something new, a tired courage. I want to try, he said. Harper and I turned to him. What do you mean? Harper asked softly. I want to understand myself, he said. I want to get help. I want to live better than this. I don't want to keep shutting down. I don't want to keep hurting you. Harper's eyes filled with tears. I don't want you to hurt, she whispered. He looked at her slowly. And I don't want to lose the one person who makes me feel safe. Her tears fell. She reached for his hand, and this time, he took it without hesitation. It was small, but it was progress. Then he looked at me. Mom, will you come with me to the doctor? His voice was fragile, young, vulnerable, like the little boy who once stood in the doorway of his room, too scared to tell me he couldn't understand his own feelings. I nodded immediately. Of course, I whispered. I'll be with you through all of it. He exhaled slowly, like he had been holding that question inside him for years. 2 days later, we went together to a small clinic in the city, a quiet place with warm colors and soft chairs. The waiting room smelled like lavender and old books. The receptionist spoke gently, like she knew everyone who walked through the door carried a quiet storm in their chest. Harper sat beside Jackson. I sat on his other side, holding the folder of old documents. When the doctor called his name, he squeezed Harper's hand for a brief moment, another small sign of trust, and stood. The doctor was a calm woman named Dr. Patel. Her voice was steady, her eyes were kind. Her office felt more like a peaceful living room than a clinic. She invited us all to sit. Jackson sat stiffly at first, his hands twisting together, but she didn't push him. Instead, she smiled gently. "Jackson, tell me what brought you here today." He hesitated. Then he said something I never thought I would hear from him. "I want to understand myself. I think I've been different for a long time. I think I shut down. I think I feel things too much, then not at all. I think I dissociate, and I think I have trouble connecting the way people want me to." His honesty made both Harper and me swallow hard. Dr. Patel nodded. "That must have been difficult," she said gently. "Living with all of that on your own." He shrugged slightly. "It was normal to me." She leaned forward. "And when did you start noticing these things?" Jackson looked at me, and I knew it was my turn. I opened the folder slowly. "This started when he was very young," I said softly. I didn't want to accept it at the time. I told myself he was sensitive, shy, brilliant, unique. But the signs were there, all of them. I handed her the papers. She took her time reading, not rushing, not judging. When she looked up, she said the words I had avoided for decades. "These patterns point to a personality disorder, specifically, one involving emotional regulation and dissociation." Harper inhaled sharply. Jackson's jaw tightened, but he didn't look surprised. He whispered, "So I'm not imagining it." "No," she said gently. "You're not, and you're not alone. Many people live with this. Many people learn to manage it and live peaceful, stable lives." His shoulders relaxed slightly. Then Dr. Patel continued, "The most important thing is understanding your triggers, your emotional responses, and your patterns. We can work together. Therapy will be essential. You can learn coping skills, grounding techniques, communication strategies." Harper wiped her eyes again. "I'll learn with him," she whispered. Jackson looked at her quietly. "Are you sure?" he asked. She nodded. "I'm sure." And for the first time, Jackson let a small, tired smile touch the corner of his mouth. The following weeks were slow, delicate, careful, not perfect. Nothing about healing ever is, but full of gentle steps forward. Jackson started therapy twice a week. He struggled sometimes. He shut down sometimes. He argued with himself, not with Harper, when he felt overwhelmed. But he was learning. Harper was learning too. She read books Dr. Patel recommended. She attended a support group online. She learned grounding exercises to help Jackson when he dissociated: soft touch, slow breathing, quiet words. She learned the difference between withdrawal and overwhelm, between silence and shutdown, between distance and self-protection. And most importantly, she learned how to listen without fear. I visited often, not to interfere, not to hide anything, but to support, to comfort, to be present. And slowly, our relationship, the one between Harper and me, began to mend. One afternoon, while Jackson was at therapy, she sat with me on the sofa, her legs tucked beneath her, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. "Mom," she said softly, "I know you were afraid, and I know you didn't mean to hurt us." I looked down at my hands. "But hurt you I did," I whispered. She nodded gently. "Yes, but I also know you loved your son more than anything. I know you thought you were protecting him, and I know you didn't have anyone to guide you back then." I felt tears forming again. "You forgive me?" I whispered. She reached out and took my hand. "I do," she said, "because now, we're doing everything right, together." My voice broke. "Thank you, sweetheart." She leaned her head against my shoulder, something she had never done before, and whispered, "We're family, Mom. This is what families do." And in that moment, I realized, forgiveness does not erase the past. It transforms it. One evening, I visited them again. Jackson was sitting in the living room, coloring in one of those adult coloring books with geometric patterns. It was something Dr. Patel recommended to help him stay grounded. He didn't notice me at first. He was focused on the pattern, carefully filling each shape with quiet patience. "Hi, sweetheart," I said softly. He looked up. "Hi, Mom." I sat next to him. "What are you working on?" He turned the book slightly so I could see. It was a pattern of circles and shapes, half-colored, soothing to look at. "It helps," he said quietly. The patterns, the repetition, it makes me calm. I nodded. That's good, I said gently. He continued coloring for a moment, then stopped and looked at me. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course, I whispered. He took a slow breath. Do you think I can be normal? My chest tightened. I felt tears sting my eyes before I could stop them. I reached for his hand. No, I said softly. He looked surprised, hurt even. I squeezed his hand gently. Sweetheart, you don't need to be normal. You just need to be you. And you are enough. His eyes softened. His lips trembled. Harper walked into the room quietly then and sat on his other side. You're not normal, she added softly, smiling through her own tears. You're better than normal. You're honest. You're gentle. You're real. And you're trying, and that matters more than anything. Jackson swallowed hard. Then very slowly he leaned his head against her shoulder. I love you, he whispered. Harper's tears fell. I love you too. I wiped my cheeks silently, watching them. And I realized, this was the first time I had seen my son speak love with clarity. Not through silence, not through avoidance, not through fear, but through vulnerability, through truth. Before I left that night, as I stood near the door, Harper walked up to me. Her voice was soft, steady, and full of something new. Not pain, not guilt, not fear, strength. Mom, she said, when I told you to leave that day, I wasn't rejecting you. I was hurting. I was confused. I felt betrayed. I know, I whispered. And you had every right to feel that way. She nodded. But I never stopped caring about you. My chest warmed. I know, I said quietly. She continued. You're not just Jackson's mother. You're my mother too. And I want us to heal together. I blinked back tears. I want that too, sweetheart. She smiled gently. And Mom, this time, no more secrets. I exhaled deeply. No more secrets, I promised. And for the first time in years, that promise felt light, not heavy, not frightening, not painful, just right. The weeks passed quietly after that, not perfect, not smooth, but peaceful in a way that felt new, fragile yet hopeful. Jackson began to understand his patterns. Harper began to understand his heart. I began to understand my mistakes, and also my worth. We were no longer three people living separate stories. We were a family learning one shared truth. Healing does not come all at once. It comes softly in moments, in breaths, in small gestures, in quiet courage. And this was only the beginning. Healing does not arrive loudly. It does not knock on the door and say, I'm here now. It comes slowly, like the morning light creeping under the curtains. Soft, quiet, almost invisible at first. But one day, you look around and realize something has changed. The air feels lighter. The rooms feel warmer. Your heart feels less tired. That was how healing entered our home, not with grand gestures, not with big speeches, but with small moments that gently stitched old wounds together. One Saturday, about 2 months after Jackson began therapy, I drove over early in the morning. Not because they needed me, but because I simply wanted to see them. When I stepped inside, something unexpected happened. Jackson was cooking breakfast. Harper was sitting on the counter, swinging her legs lightly, smiling at him. A real smile, warm and genuine, the kind I had not seen on her face since their wedding day. Jackson looked up when he saw me. Morning, Mom, he said, not distant, not overwhelmed, just normal, soft, present. Morning, I whispered, feeling something warm rise in my chest. Harper hopped off the counter and hugged me gently. We're making pancakes, she said with a light laugh. Well, Jackson is making pancakes. I'm just supervising. Jackson rolled his eyes, slightly playful, not irritated. Supervising? You're eating half the chocolate chips before they reach the batter. Harper grinned and shrugged. And I stood there watching them, my son, who once could barely speak when overwhelmed, and my daughter-in-law, who once cried alone on the kitchen floor, now laughing together. It felt like a quiet miracle. A slow, gentle miracle that came from honesty, patience, therapy, and love that refused to give up. I sat at the table, listening to them talk while they cooked. Simple things, small jokes, plans for the evening, and I realized I was witnessing something I had feared might never happen. Peace, real peace, not pretend peace, not forced peace, not a peace built on silence or lies, but peace built on truth. After breakfast, Harper went upstairs to shower. Jackson and I stayed at the table, sipping warm tea. He was quiet for a moment, staring into his cup. Then he said something that made me freeze. Mom, I forgive you. My hands trembled slightly as I placed my cup down. You, what? I whispered. He looked up, his eyes calm but soft with emotion. I forgive you, for everything, for hiding things, for protecting me too much, for making choices you thought were right at the time. I swallowed hard. Jackson, I don't deserve. He shook his head gently. Mom, you did what you knew. You did what you thought was best. You loved me. That's all I ever needed. Tears slid down my cheeks silently. I made your life harder, I whispered. He shook his head again. No, my disorder made life hard. You gave me the tools to survive even when you didn't understand the name for it. You gave me love. You gave me stability. You gave me safety. And now, you're giving me honesty. He placed his hand on mine, something he had rarely done even as a child. That's enough, he said softly. More than enough. I leaned forward and hugged him gently. He stiffened for a second as he always did, but then he relaxed slowly and hugged me back. The warmth of my son's embrace felt like a second chance. Healing did not happen only for Jackson. It happened for Harper too. I watched her become stronger, calmer, more patient, not because she was forced to, but because she wanted to understand her husband in ways she never knew before. She stopped taking Jackson's silence personally. She stopped fearing his shutdowns. She stopped thinking his dissociation meant he didn't love her. Instead, she learned what helped him. Soft light instead of bright rooms, quiet instead of questions, deep breaths together instead of emotional demands, gentle touch on the hand instead of sudden hugs. She learned the difference between space and distance. She learned that love is not always loud. She learned that some hearts speak in whispers. One evening, she told me something that made my heart ache with pride. Mom, she said, I don't want a perfect husband. I want the husband I have, the real Jackson, the one who tries every day, the one who loves quietly, the one who is learning. That is enough for me. I put my hand on her cheek. You're stronger than you know, I whispered. She smiled. So are you, Mom? And in that moment, I felt something new between us, not the fragile bond of polite family ties, not the distance created by secrets, but a bond built on truth and shared tears. A bond I had longed for, without knowing how to reach it. A week later, something happened I never expected. Jackson asked if we could all go out for a walk by the lake. For most people, this might seem ordinary, but for my son who avoided crowds, noise, unpredictability, it was a remarkable step. When we arrived, the sun was setting, painting the sky with orange and pink. The water shimmered softly. Children laughed in the distance. Couples walked hand in hand. Jackson breathed in deeply, closing his eyes. I like it here, he said quietly. Harper slipped her hand into his. You okay? She asked. He nodded. For the first time in a long time. I think I am. We walked slowly along the path. No rush. No pressure. Just gentle steps and soft conversation. At one point, Jackson turned to me and said, Mom, I want you to know something. What is it, sweetheart? I asked. I don't blame you for anything. I don't want you to live with guilt. I want you to be part of my life, our life, without fear. My eyes filled again. I love you, he whispered. His voice cracked at the last word. I always did, even when I didn't know how to show it. I reached out and touched his cheek lightly. And I love you, I whispered back. More than you will ever know. Harper wrapped her arm around him, smiling softly. You two are too emotional, she teased gently. Jackson smirked a small, rare smirk and nudged her lightly. I'm allowed to be emotional sometimes. Therapy rules. We all laughed quietly, and the sound of that laughter felt like a new beginning. Later that night, after they dropped me home, I stood at my porch watching their car drive away. The cool night breeze touched my face. The trees rustled softly. A few stars peeked through the clouds. And I whispered something to myself, something that felt like a quiet vow. No more hiding, no more fear, no more silence, only truth, only love, only hope, because I finally understood something it took me almost a lifetime to learn. Hiding the truth does not protect the people we love. Honesty does. Understanding does. Compassion does. Jackson deserved a mother who saw him completely. Harper deserved a husband she truly understood. And I deserved peace, not the fragile peace of secrets, but the strong peace of truth. And now, we finally had that. 1 year passed. Jackson continued therapy. Harper continued learning. I continued supporting. They grew closer. They grew stronger. They grew softer with each other. Not perfect, but honest. Some days were still difficult. Some days Jackson shut down. Some days Harper felt tired. Some days fear tried to creep back in. But now they faced those moments together. With strategies, with understanding, with patience, with love. One evening, on their first anniversary since facing the truth, they invited me over for dinner. Jackson cooked. Harper baked a small cake. And I watched them move around the kitchen like two people who had built a rhythm only they understood. After dinner, Jackson gave Harper a small gift, a bracelet made from tiny silver beads. "This is for surviving the hard days with me," he said softly. Harper smiled. "And this," she said, handing him a small notebook, "is for writing your thoughts on days when you can't speak them." He opened it slowly. Inside, she had written, "I love your mind. I love your silence. I love your heart. I love all the versions of you." Jackson wiped his cheek. "And for the first time in a long time," he whispered, "I know." Harper hugged him gently. I sat there, my heart full, watching them with quiet pride. And I realized, life had not given them an easy path. But together with truth and love, they walked it beautifully. Now, as I share this story, I do not feel shame anymore. I feel gratitude. Gratitude that my son is finally understood. Gratitude that my daughter-in-law stayed. Gratitude that healing is possible even after years of silence. Gratitude that love grows stronger when truth enters the room. If someone were to ask me what I learned, I would say this: do not hide the truth out of fear. Face it with love instead. Because the truth will come out. It will rise through cracks, through tears, through whispers, through pain. But when it arrives, it can become a beginning, not an ending. A beginning of understanding. A beginning of healing. A beginning of real connection. I once feared the truth would break us, but now I know the truth saved us. It gave my son the chance to know himself. It gave Harper the chance to love him fully. And it gave me the chance to be a real mother again. Not a protector of secrets, but a witness to growth. And today, when I visit their home, and I see Jackson smiling softly as Harper laughs beside him, I understand something simple, gentle, and true. Love does not need perfection. It needs understanding. It needs patience. It needs truth. And sometimes, it needs time. But when love grows in the warmth of truth, it becomes something stronger than fear, a light that finally reaches every corner of a home once shadowed by silence. A light that says, we are still here. We are learning. We are healing together.